Welcome to The Recurring Plot, presented by Curb and Turf. On this show, we interview agritourism farmers, authors, leaders, and influencers who share their insights on growing and monetizing your agritourism business. Here's your host, Dustin Reed.
Hi everyone, this is Dustin. I'm from Curb and Turf. You're listening to The Recurring Plot, a show that talks about everything RVs and also how to make more recurring income for your property. I'm excited to be talking to our guest today, Nathan Gwilliam. He's actually a serial marketer, but I'm going to let him introduce himself because he has tons of titles. He's done a lot within marketing and also mostly in the realm of business. So I'll let him kind of take it over for his introduction.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the show today, Dustin. Just as a quick introduction for myself, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've built and sold 3 digital ventures, the most recent being adoption.com, which is the world's most used adoption website. In addition to building ventures for myself, I've consulted for numerous companies and helped them to create and grow their ventures as well.
Great. So for our guests, I know you probably don't like talking about yourself, but I feel like it's going to help our guests make a better connection. Just can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business in general? I mean, obviously that's probably with your educational background.
Sure. So I was going to college and I was studying entrepreneurship. And one semester at the beginning of my junior year, back in the day when nobody had mobile phones, I took a call on our landline phone in college for my roommate. And the caller left a message for my roommate that basically said, there's this cool new class. It's called HTML, and you should sign up for this class. It was trying to get my roommate to sign up with them. And neither the caller nor my roommate ended up taking the class, but I did. And I signed up, took the class, took the second class, really loved it. And I ended up writing a business plan. My eyes were open to the power of the internet and how it was this tectonic shift that was changing the business landscape. It felt like the Wild West, where you could kind of pick your own homestead, you pick your own place, and if you just stayed there, you could own it. And so I picked a niche of adoption, won a couple of business plan competitions with that, and started my first venture.
You mentioned adoption specifically. Was there anything about adoption that made you choose that niche?
I was a missionary for a couple of years in Brazil and fell in love with the street children. And, I'd give the change in my pocket to them to try to help a little bit. But as a volunteer missionary that wasn't getting paid anything for my work, my money didn't go very far. And so I vowed to do something to make a lasting difference in their lives when I got back, and hence adoption.com, using the internet to help children through adoption.
That's awesome. I wish more people would be that philanthropic in their business adventures, because then, it just means so much more to them, I would think. Because you're talking about tectonic shifts, and I feel like that could be one of those things where it's kind of a passion that you do, right? I've heard you on your own podcast, Monetization Nation, talk a little bit about that. And can you talk a little bit more about kind of those tectonic shifts within marketing or within business?
Yeah, sure. So let me start off by explaining what a tectonic shift is.
Mm-hmm.
So think of the world of geology. This is where we get the analogy from. And you have these tectonic plates that are constantly moving against each other and shifting. And where that movement happens, we can either have massive destruction like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. There's massive volcano that's erupting in Hawaii today. Or on the other side, we could have massive growth like mountain formation. We live right off the Wasatch Mountain front, and those mountains were formed by 2 tectonic plates moving against each other. The same thing happens in business. The internet, for example, changed how businesses operated, right? Businesses have been focused on the bricks and mortar business model, and with the internet, most of them had to shift to internet business models. And you look at companies like Sears that didn't leverage that tectonic shift very well, and they filed bankruptcy. And then you take other people like Amazon, right? And the guy that started Amazon Jeff Bezos, he had no business beating Sears, right? Sears had all the money, all the resources, the vendor relationships, all the stores, all the employees, right? And he was just some little guy with, teeny little team, but he leveraged the internet really well. He leveraged this tectonic shift. And now he's the wealthiest man in the world, or the second wealthiest man in the world, because he effectively leveraged that tectonic shift. And we could go back and give many examples of that. Think of taxis, right? Yellow cabs used to dominate. If you wanted to get a car transportation somewhere, you were in a city that wasn't your own, you call a yellow cab. And it was frustrating. I remember many times I'd call a cab and I'd wait forever. Sometimes they wouldn't even show up. When they did show up, you get to your destination and the screen says you owe one amount and they charge you a much larger amount. And uh, you never knew if they were taking the fastest route there or they were taking a longer route just so they could get more mileage on it. It was really a frustrating system. And then Uber came around, and there was this tectonic shift that had happened from phone calls, from landline phones to smartphones to mobile apps, right? And Uber leveraged this tectonic shift super effectively, right? You could pull up your phone, you could order someone, you knew exactly how much it was going to cost to take that ride before you even accepted the ride. You knew exactly the route they were going to take. You knew exactly how far they were away. It felt like Uber leveraged this tectonic shift to solve almost every single problem that people faced in the taxi industry. And as a result, they dominated. And the traditional yellow cabs have, their business has plummeted, and it feels like everybody takes Ubers now. And so if we want to create a business model today, instead of saying, what should I do? What product should I sell? What service should I sell? I think we should start off by saying, what are the biggest tectonic shifts that are transforming my business landscape today? And then we should ask how we can leverage those tectonic shifts to disrupt our industry, right? And if we do that, we have a far greater chance of succeeding than if we just start off with a product or a service.
So what if you already have a product or service and then you just need to adapt to that tectonic shift, whatever that may be? And I guess I have another question with regard to that, just because sometimes I feel like could have been a tectonic shift, whether it's technology or whatever. I remember when pagers came out, that was all the rave, and then that kind of died out pretty quickly. I mean, there's certain things that obviously feel like could be a tectonic shift, but don't end up being that. It kind of seems like a leapfrog to the next bigger thing, if that makes sense. So how can businesses or business owners, any entrepreneurs recognize those shifts like that you're talking about?
That's a great question. So I think what you're asking is, how do we know if it's a fad
Right.
that's going to go away in the short term, or how do we know if it's a tectonic shift that's going to be here in the long run?
Right.
And I mean, even in the long run, tectonic shifts can change, right? Those tectonic plates never stay in exactly the same place, right? We have to figure out what is the shift happening today. And this is the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make when they figure out tectonic shift. There was one company I was consulting for, and they kept telling me over and over again, we've been doing this 20 years. It's been working for us 20 years. We're going to keep doing it, right? And that is almost, in today's world, that's almost a guaranteed recipe for failure, because the plates are moving. You found the shift and you were successful with the shift 20 years ago, right? But by definition, that is probably not the same shift. That same shift is probably not still happening today. And so what made you successful 20 years ago is not the same thing that's going to make you successful. And you have to realize, I was successful 20 years ago because I was good at, and I found a tectonic shift. But what is the tectonic shift today? So by definition, it doesn't have to last forever for it to be a tectonic shift. We just have to quickly and effectively adapt to it. And you asked a question before, and sometimes we already have a product or service, but need to adapt to the tectonic shift. And that's exactly right. Sears could have adapted to the tectonic shift of the internet effectively. Yellow cabs could have adapted to the mobile devices effectively, right? You can do it. They usually don't, though. Large businesses that are successful in making money, they're afraid to adapt to something new because they're afraid it's going to disrupt their current revenue stream. And And that reticence to change makes it very difficult for the large companies to effectively leverage their tectonic shifts. And so that's actually a competitive advantage for the small business. A lot of the small businesses will say, well, I can't compete with that big company. They've got all the resources and they've got all the money, they've got all the people, they've got the big office, they've got the big brand name. But what the small entrepreneur has is the ability to quickly and effectively leverage the tectonic shift. And it's kind of like David and Goliath. David didn't pick up a sword and a shield and try to fight Goliath. He would have lost. If he would have fought the same way and Goliath had his huge sword and huge shield, David probably wouldn't have won that battle. He won because he came out at a different direction. He purposely didn't put on his armor. He kept his distance. Goliath's strength in the sword and shield and strength and size was actually a weakness when David was far away from him. Goliath moved really slow, and David could keep his distance and sling the rocks at him.
Right.
So as entrepreneurs, we can't go head on with our competitors and try to compete with them at their game. We've got to find the tectonic shift and do it differently.
Yep. I agree, because that's something I found working with Curb and Turf. Being a smaller business, we have to learn to pivot, even though we may have our mindset on something, but then, market research or whatever tells us to do another thing. I'm sure there's lots of that within entrepreneurship or within business as well. Okay, we've talked about having those tectonic plates, but what are those categories, or what can you classify them?
Some of the tectonic shifts, some of the biggest tectonic shifts today. Yeah. So there was a Christmas not too long ago where I caught COVID, and I was quarantined upstairs in our guest room. And being the marketing geek that I am, I was curious what the marketing trends were for the coming year. And so I went and found 50 different sources that were talking about predictions of marketing trends for the coming year. And I put them in a spreadsheet and I correlated them and found the ones that were talked about the most. And I found that more than half of these trends, these marketing trends that were being talked about, were all part of one mega trend or one massive tectonic shift. And as I've researched it more, I went and bought every single book I could find on this tectonic shift, and researched and interviewed people on my show that talk about this shift. And as I've researched it more, I believe this is the biggest tectonic shift that's transforming the business landscape today. And the tectonic shift is a problem and a solution together. The problem is that people don't trust businesses anymore. I remember when I went and bought my first car, I actually went to a few dealerships and I asked the car salesman what the best car was, within my certain category. And I can't fathom doing that today, right? Can you imagine buying an SUV and going and asking the Toyota salesman what the best SUV is, right? They're going to be biased. They're just going to tell you the good things about their SUVs and the bad things about everyone else's SUVs. And so as a result of this bias behavior, and for a lot of other reasons, people don't trust businesses. And if you want to buy an SUV, what are you going to do, Dustin?
I'm going to research it. I'm going to research the heck out of it.
You're going to find the data and the statistics, the crash ratings. You're probably going to find reviews from real people. You might read what influencers have to say. You might get referrals from friends, right? Every single one of those things we talked about are examples of credibility. Instead of trusting the business who is not credible, who is perceived as biased, you now turn to sources of credibility. And so I call it credibility marketing. And I'm working on a book on this. We're about 2/3 of the way done. So credibility marketing is the answer to people not trusting businesses. I saw a study recently that 93%, 94% of people don't trust ads. And 77% of people say that they don't trust anything a business says about themselves, right? So really, it's not even worth trying to tell people the good things about us, trying to market from our voice. That used to be the way people did businesses, right? They would create a product or service, they would go buy a bunch of ads, and they would use those ads to tell the world how awesome they are. And that business model does not work very well anymore. And the solution to that, the tectonic shift, is credibility marketing. It's leveraging credible sources, working through influencers, working through our customers to get referrals, using testimonials and video storytelling, getting our message out there through much more credible voices than our own.
So, along with that, how do you make yourself credible? Is it just by leaning on those that have that credibility? And who governs someone credible?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I guess the first point is whether we are credible or not is not what matters. What matters is whether we're perceived as credible, right? Because you could be credible, but if nobody knows you're credible, right,
They
it
don't know
doesn't
you.
matter.
Right. Right.
Yeah, they don't know us, and you're still not going to be credible.
I think it kind of ties into what the credit bureaus used to be, right? It used to be that
Yeah,
you go to a marketplace and someone would vouch for you, or you could trust this person because of XYZ, or someone would almost vouch for you in a way. That's kind of how I'm picturing it, but maybe that's
yeah.
antiquated.
No, the credit bureaus are a great example of credibility marketing, right? They look at whether you've paid your bills on time. They look at, how much money you've borrowed. Did you pay it back? And based upon how you've responsibly dealt or irresponsibly dealt with your credit, they give you a score, and then people can trust that score because it's vouching for your credibility. Yeah, that's a great example. So in the world of credibility today, we went out, and after we discovered this concept of credibility marketing, this tectonic shift, I went out and bought every single book I could find on the topic, right? Trust-based marketing,
Right.
authority marketing, right? All of these different kinds of books. And there's a lot of books related to that. And went and gathered all the articles we could find on it. And we actually developed a framework of 11 steps that we can take to establish our credibility and grow our credibility. And we did a survey. We surveyed hundreds of people, and they told us which ones really mattered and which ones didn't matter. And so at the beginning of this survey, we asked people how likely are they to trust what a business says about themselves. And 77% of people said that they were not likely to trust what a business said about themselves. And then we showed them this credibility marketing framework that we developed. And we said, if a business follows these steps, how likely would you be likely to trust the business? And 96% of people said that they would be likely to trust a business who followed this credibility marketing framework. So there is a solution. Don't despair. It's not like there's this problem that's impossible to solve. You've just got to know the steps and follow those steps.
Would you mind sharing just a couple of those steps, or what
Yeah.
you found from your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to actually be credible. That's the first step. So credibility marketing isn't about faking it. It isn't about pretending to be something that you're not and telling the world you're credible when really you treat people poorly and you don't do what you say you're going to do, right?
Right.
If you try to do credibility marketing and you are not credible, it's even worse, because they will see it in today's digital world, and they will know it, and they will use things like reviews to tell the world that you've set an expectation of being credible, and you failed in that expectation. You did not meet it. So that's number one, is you got to be credible. You got to say what you're going to do. You got to provide a great experience. You got to exceed expectations. You got to provide an amazing customer experience, great products and services. Be credible. Number two is a concept that I call passion marketing. What many businesses do is they start off by building a product or a service, and then they say, how do I market this product or service? Passion marketing flips that on its head. And you start passion marketing by going to you find your ideal customers, you go to your ideal customers, and you find out what drives their lives, what they're most passionate about. And then you build your product or your service completely around those level 10 passions that you find in your passion marketing. And when you do that, you're much more likely to be successful than just trying to figure out how to market a product or service. The reason for that is I remember when I was a kid, we had 4 TV stations and a black and white TV, and I'm not even that old. And I know we didn't have cable. And I remember when we got a 5th station, channel 45 in the Phoenix area. And it was so cool because we had a whole nother choice of a show to watch.
Right.
And today, there are so many, for every hour I have available, there's 1,000 good things I could watch on TV or movies or podcasts, or, there's 1,000 good things I could do with that hour. It used to
Mm-hmm.
be when I was a kid, I'd save up some money if I wanted to buy something, and I'd go to Fiesta Mall in Mesa, Arizona, and I'd walk around the mall and try to find something to buy with my money. And if I wanted to buy a t-shirt, I was limited to the 1 or 2 shops that really sold t-shirts there. And that's not how people buy things anymore, right? You go online, Amazon has 330 million products, and that's just on one website. And then you find the right website and you go to Google Shopping, and it tells you every place that sells that product and tells you the best price for it. With every hour and with every dollar that our customers have, they have more choices to do with that 1 hour, that $1 than they could ever do in a lifetime. And because of that, like, it used to be, you could just make a good product or service and try to sell it to people. That because they have so many choices of what to do with their limited time or limited money, being good is no longer good enough. You've got to figure out how to be a level 10 passion. And that's what passion marketing is all about. And that's the second step of credibility marketing. Another step in there, I call, nobody else uses this term, so people probably laugh at me, but I kind of coined this term, customer influencers. And so how do you turn your customers into influencers? So what works? Reviews work, referrals work, testimonial videos work, right? Those are all examples of turning customers into influencers, right? And so that's a very successful strategy, is figuring out how do you take your happy customers and how do you leverage them, film videos of them, get them to write reviews for you, get them to refer you to your friends. Another example of credibility marketing.
Yeah. So what are some companies that you feel do well at that, at making credibility, or I guess more of that passion marketing or credibility marketing? Um,
Yeah. So there's different companies that do a good job of it in different ways. For example, I've seen sometimes companies do a good job of it in their advertising. Not too long ago, I saw a mattress delivery truck. And on the side of the mattress delivery truck, it said, the most highly rated and reviewed mattress company in America, right? And if that statement is really true, if they really are the most highly rated and reviewed mattress company in America, like, you automatically are going to trust their mattresses, right?
right.
That is automatic credibility. So that's a great example of someone that did it in their advertising. Another example would be maybe Kylie Jenner, right? Kylie Jenner was a nobody, right? She was from a famous family, but she really did not have credibility herself. So what did she do? She started building her own platform. She started building a following and a reach of people who knew her and liked her and trusted her. And then what did she do? She released Kylie Cosmetics and became a billionaire because so that's one of the other strategies that we haven't talked about yet is platform marketing, right? You got to build your own platform. Instead of just creating a product and trying to sell the product through ads, build a platform, build a group of followers that know you, like you, and trust you, where you control the relationships. You're not just dependent on someone else's platform like Facebook or Instagram, but you get their email address, you get the relationship with them, you get it where they know you and trust you, and then you build a product and a set product or service that you sell to that group of people. And by having your own platform, often it's like through a show, having videos or podcasts or blogs or social of some type. As you create that show on your own platform, that's one of the other strategies to do credibility marketing.
Kind of that's what I'm doing too, right? So
Yeah.
it's something we're trying to, as Curb and Turf grows, we're hoping to get more people to recognize the importance of the problem in our industry, which is not enough places for RVers to go. So we're just trying to create an awareness, right? I think part of marketing can be educational. as well. So, because you mentioned building your own platform, doesn't that go really hand in hand with credibility marketing, like you were saying before? Just because you can't really build a platform unless you're credible.
Yep.
So, I would think that credibility would have to come first and then the platform. Or is there a case where there's you have a platform that's built and eventually you gain that credibility? Or I mean, I guess I'm seeing this kind of more of a linear kind of approach, if that makes
The
sense.
chicken and the egg kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So let me restate, your concern is maybe you need to have credibility before you have a show,
yeah,
before you build your platform.
right,
Or you could see it the other way of saying, I need to have a platform before I can be credible, right?
right,
Uh, so having a show and publishing regularly on your show, that's one of the best ways to own your own platform, right? And this
right,
concept of platform marketing and publishing through your platform, those are actually two of the 11 elements of the credibility marketing framework. And I mean, you look at people like Elon Musk, right? He can say something about his Tesla company, and everybody hears it, and it makes news because he's credible, he has that reach and that following. But how many people can tell us the name of the CEO of Ford? Right? I can't tell you. Can you tell me the name? No. And
but
can you tell me the last thing that he posted or said, or
it's
last press
also,
release he wanted people to hear?
it could be a
Yeah.
double-edged sword though, right? Just because
Yeah.
with him taking over Twitter, now we have other platforms, where, and I don't want to get into super political or whatever. I'm not trying to politicize anything. I'm just trying to state what it is, just because he's wants a more abundant platform for Twitter, but now we have a backlash. And it wasn't like that before, right? I know the
Yep.
CEO, like to your point, I don't know the CEO previous to him, that was the
Of
CEO of
Twitter.
Twitter. I don't.
That's right. So he's embraced this strategy. Elon Musk completely understands the strategy of platform marketing. He built Tesla with almost zero marketing. They have almost no marketing budget, and they've built this platform, they've got this reach, and he's become the second wealthiest man in the world with almost no marketing because he has embraced platform marketing.
Right.
And because this concept of platform marketing has worked so well for him, he went and bought one of the best platforms out there. He bought
Right.
Twitter. And now he's leveraging that and got even more credible. He's not just someone on Twitter with a bunch of following. He is now the owner of Twitter. He supercharged this business strategy. And I know people say, well, I don't agree with him, or I don't agree with this. And honestly, that doesn't matter. One of the best ways to build a following and to have a voice and really leverage a platform is to say things that are controversial. If you always say the thing that everybody wants to hear, it's not news. It doesn't make, CNN or Fox News, right? You have to let the banned people back on Twitter, right? Because that makes news, right? Whether or not it's the right thing to do, it's how you leverage that strategy. You don't do the normal thing everyone's expecting, but you kind of polarize a little bit and take a stand.
Yeah, definitely think he takes a stand, and I think Elon, in all honesty, is, I don't want to state it this way, but it seems like he was a gambler. He gambled a lot on SpaceX, right? He was down to like one of the last, I think he had like three goes at his launches, and then it was gonna literally bankrupt him. I think it almost did.
Yeah, he's taken a lot of risk.
Right, he's taken a lot of risk. He's was one of the first ones with PayPal, right? I believe, and then that's how
Yep.
he basically was able to bankroll some like SpaceX with that or whatever.
And Tesla. Yep.
He's very fascinating, and I love his story. But again, not everyone's an Elon Musk, but everyone can possibly become an Elon Musk, or not into that. And we're not even talking to that grand a level, right? We're talking about, owning your space, and I think that's
But
probably good.
right. And if you look at the moves that he made that has made him his money, right? Every single one of those was leveraging a tectonic shift, right? Going back to where we started this conversation, he did electronic payments for, person to person peer electronic payments, right? And they won that space with PayPal, and he sold and exited. And then they did electronic cars, another tectonic shift, right? And then they did this space exploration as NASA was getting out of space and announced they're getting out of space and they were going to be investing in private companies. He jumped on that tectonic shift, right? He's done a very good job at seeing the tectonic shifts that are transforming the landscape and leveraging those. And so that's probably the best thing you can learn from Elon Musk is before you try to create a product or service, or if you're trying to market that product or service, before you develop your strategy, clearly identify what are the biggest tectonic shifts today and figure out how you leverage those.
Yep. It's interesting how quickly it moves, especially now. I think with technology and everything that we have nowadays, I think those tectonic shifts are going to occur more frequently than they used to, right? Just
That's
because,
right.
so it's going to be even harder not necessarily harder, but you have to recognize those a lot quicker just because those are going to be changing. It's going to come in waves, and it's not only going to come in waves, it's going to build on top of each other, right?
That's
Until
right.
it develops into something, whatever the future holds, whatever that is, right?
That's right. Yes, they are definitely happening with much greater frequency. And the good news from that is that means there's greater opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
There's many more tectonic shifts we can leverage. Go find your tectonic shift and leverage it. It's kind of like riding a wave into shore, right? If you're out there and you have your surfboard and you try to swim into shore, that takes a lot of effort. But if you can just get up on that wave, right? That it's going to go to shore whether or not you're on it. And if you can just get up on the wave, it's going to take you to shore with a fraction of the effort, fraction of the time. Same thing with a tectonic shift.
What's been the common thread, would you say, within companies that you've helped build? Or is there even a blueprint of growing any business, or is it just very unique depending on the business you're growing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So another way to ask that question would be, what is working today? Like, what is the business model that is working the best today? And if I had answered that question, I would say it's building a show. It's building a following of people that know you, like you, and trust you in your niche, right? Don't try to go after everybody. Pick a small niche, own that niche, and do a really good job with video and podcast and blog and social and a newsletter, right? And get people to follow you, get their email addresses, and develop relationships with those people. And then create a product or service you own related to that niche that you, especially something that's has a recurring revenue stream, and then sell it to that following. I think that is the best business model, on the planet today. And that's what you guys are doing, right? You guys have this curb and turf site where you help connect the RVers and the landowners. And so you've created the show for landowners, right? Where you're teaching them how to make more money from their properties. So you're doing exactly that business model. And it's not a flash in the pan, get rich quick, make $1 million overnight type of business model. It may take you a year or 2 years to build a really good following. But the reality is, once you do, you can sell. I mean, they know you, like you, trust you, and are following you, it's almost a guaranteed success that you can sell products and services in that niche to that audience. I have a friend of mine that I was talking to yesterday, and he's an influencer. I won't even say what niche he's in, but he did a product review. He doesn't even have that big of a follow, maybe in the tens of thousands, right? Maybe 20,000, maybe. He republished a video. It was a video analyzing water filters. He was just comparing different water filters and made a recommendation of the best water filter. He made $200,000 in 1 month republishing a 5-year-old video to his audience because the people know him, like him, and trust him, and they wanted to know what was best. There's an insane amount of money you can make once you have that trust, right? He did credibility marketing, right? They trust him, and he doesn't have to sell to people anymore. He's prescribing to people, right? They trust him,
Right.
and he just tells them what they should buy. That is the
Well,
best business model on the planet.
yep. He's also offering his customers something, right? He's reviewing the filters. So they're already invested in him. So they've already invested time in him. So they're already interested in what he is reviewing, I'm presuming,
Yep.
and that it's beneficial for both. I think that's a lot of cases for a lot of customers, is especially when I get emails. I tend to, like, if it's not offering me something, then I will quickly I'll quickly block it. That's kind of the power of email in a way, just because you can unsubscribe or whatever, because that's kind of your dollar in essence. You have your purchasing power, but you also have your power to view or whatever it is. There's customers that are gonna support you, if depending on what you're offering, is what I'm trying to get at. If you're offering
Yeah, and what
some
you're
kind of benefit, then they're gonna be more apt to listen.
that's exactly right. And what you just mentioned here is one of the other elements of credibility marketing. And this is the concept of providing value first. So think about back when you were dating, right? If you went to a social gathering of some type and you met a new girl there, and you like her, she's pretty, and you ask her to marry you, right? you know what's your chance of her saying yes? No, nothing. She doesn't know you, she doesn't like you, she doesn't trust you yet, right? So what do? You get to know her, you have a conversation, you provide value, she has fun with you, she laughs, maybe then you escalate it and go to the next step, and you invite her on a date, and you take her out and you give her some dinner, and you spend more time with her, and she has more fun with you, and you ask her, you know you you provide value first, and then maybe 6 months into providing value, or a year longer into providing value, then you can start talking about marriage, right? And the same thing is true in marketing. So many people, like, the biggest mistake salespeople make is they get an email address or they get a phone number, and they immediately go in for the sell, right? Before they've provided any value. And you have no credibility, zero credibility in that situation. It's not even worth trying to sell it to that person.
Yep.
So before you try to sell, you've got to go provide value.
Yeah, and that's something I've learned. I used to do a lot of the advertising for Albertsons. I used to work further in that corporate, and so I used to do all their signs and everything else. And I've kind of realized how quickly they. It was interesting, just because and I'm not trying. This isn't. I'm sure this is not how they are now. I hope not. They would try to put all their messaging on one sign, and this would drive me up the wall, because I feel like part of good marketing for me is storytelling as well, right?
Yep.
Because as you're going through the store, you could say something on outside, you know, post or whatever it is. Something is inside, and then you could start leading the customers on a journey, whatever that is. I feel like Albertsons did an injustice where they try to put everything all in one sign, and usually you have like 2 or 3 seconds at most that people are going to be reading the sign, so they're not going to be reading everything either. You can almost scare customers away with an overload of information as well.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. So my 16-year-old job was working at Albertsons, pushing carts in Tempe, Arizona. So we share a common Albertsons pedigree.
oh, good or bad, I don't know.
So an interesting point on that, though, is
Mhm,
how often, like, I know those Albertson signs, and how
mhm,
often are those signs, they have a price and they're trying to compete on price, right?
mhm.
It says bananas 59 cents. Well, I guess nowadays it probably says 89 cents, but you have a product and you have a price and how much money they're going to save, right? And
Right.
and okay, that kind of works, but why don't we market to something that gives that product credibility, and not just trying to race to the bottom of the price barrel, right? If we're going to do bananas, right, why don't we do a sign that says, you know get more potassium in your diet so you can prevent cramps, and whatever, tell people the amazing benefits they're going to get from a product, instead of just always trying to compete on price.
Yep, I agree. I, there's lots of stuff that I've learned, because it's even through that, I've learned you have to try to get multiple yeses to kind of get the big yes, kind of like you were talking about
Yep.
earlier. If you're in a courtship, especially, like, let's go back to your example. You want to ask out a lady or whoever, your companion, whatever that may be, and you're working on these small yeses to get the big yes. So you're going to pop the
That's
question, right?
right.
So
Great
that's
example.
similar situation. So we've talked about, building a platform, building a show is probably one of the best ways for you to do that. Are there tools out there that you've seen that could help our customers or anyone listening that be able to do that?
Yeah, that great question. So I started my show. Russell Brunson, who I think is the best digital marketer of our generation. Russell had made a promise to marketers, a bunch of marketers, and he said, if you publish every day for a year, you'll be financially free. And so I decided to take him up on that promise. And I started my show. It was called Monetization Nation. I'm about to change the name of that to call it Credibility Marketing. And Russell Brunson I was following this advice from Russell Brunson, doing my show, publishing video, blog, podcast, social every day. And it was a lot
It's a
of work.
lot.
It was kicking
Yep.
my butt. And I realized that for me to do this, I needed at least 25 different technologies, right? I needed a technology to record. I needed a technology to live stream. I needed a technology to schedule my interviews. I needed technology to syndicate to social. I needed a technology to syndicate to podcasts, right? There were all these different things I had to pay for. And I was paying almost $2,000 a month for all of these technologies. It was so expensive. And then a lot of those technologies, they didn't even integrate together. And a lot of them weren't made for running a show. Like we used Libsyn to manage our episode flow, but that was made for like software project management. That wasn't made for episode management. It was missing a lot of the things that I needed. And I was talking to my team one day and I just said, someone needs to create this all-in-one suite that can do all of these different things in one technology platform, right? Where you can take dozens of different technologies and make them integrate really well together and give them all the features you need for show and make it available for a reasonable price. And I finally had my aha moment and I realized, okay, I'm going to be that somebody. I'm going to build that platform. So almost 2 years ago, I hired a development team and we started building it. And we now have about 16 developers and we've been building a product called Show Platform. We've rolled out close to a dozen beta customers on it. And we're scheduled for March 13th to release to the public. And there'll be more than 30 different modules, everything from recording your show to editing your show, transcribing it, monetizing your show, growing your show, SEO, all of those different pieces you need, even pieces that nobody else in the industry has. We're just going really deep into this one little niche of creating, growing, and monetizing an online show. So if you guys are interested in, if your audience is interested in learning more, they can visit showplatform.com.
So we utilize Show Platform as well with all our shows that we've been doing. And I can attest that it's something you should be looking into just because not only is it going to be saving you money, like Nathan has been saying, he spent nearly $2,000 or more than $2,000 just for platforming a lot of his stuff or
And that
getting
was
his
per
podcast
month.
stuff. That's per month.
Yeah.
And so just that value alone is going to be saving you not only money but time as well, just because all these are going to be integrated
That's right.
into one platform, which is huge. And working with other developers, I could attest that that's a lot to line up and to make sure it works. So that's
Well,
awesome.
thanks for being a beta tester and thanks for the plug. I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate it, and we appreciate everything that you've done for us so far, and we look forward to the future. And we hope that everyone listening to this, that you found value in what Nathan has been talking about, just because these are things that could be applied to agritourism when we're talking about passion marketing and building your platform. A good way to increase your platform is just by listing on Curb and Turf. So I invite you to go to curbandturf.com/host, and then you could set up your listing, and then that way you'll have more people come into your property.
So what I love about Curb and Turf, right? You have someone that has property that's not making enough money. They're not making any money or they're not making enough money on it. Maybe they have a farm and kind of struggling to make ends meet, or maybe they have property they're not making anything off of. I love Curb and Turf because it provides, number one, a brand new stream of income, right? Kind of like Airbnb did, where it helps someone who had a home, they weren't using all the rooms, they could monetize that. This lets landowners monetize it in the same way. And then in addition to that, if you already have something that makes money that you're trying to bring people to, let's say you have a, pick your own strawberry farm or something like that, or you have a corn maze, right? When you do curb and turf, you're not just making the new stream of income, but you're bringing more people to your property to generate more money from your existing streams of income. So it's a double whammy that's even better than an Airbnb business model.
Yeah, I agree. And you're not going to have the risks. So I do appreciate that. It's something that's super important to us is that we want, especially property owners, to utilize that resource. So there's some people that are not even using that resource. And if you are using that, good for you. But there's other ways you could do that and then improve upon that. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is pivoting and figuring out those tectonic shifts. So I think that's super important, especially, in today's society. So, well, I appreciate
Thanks for having me on the show today.
I appreciate it, Nathan. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for everything. And thank you everyone for listening. And I can't wait to talk to you and see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to The Recurring Plot, presented by Curb and Turf. Curb and Turf works like Airbnb, but we help RVers to find land where they can park when they're traveling. Make more money from your land. Please visit curbandturf.com to list your property.